Okay, guys, welcome to the first class of Lagyu, Vakya, Vritti. In a previous class, some of us have looked at Drisha Viveka, and that text, Drisha Viveka, is Viveka, discrimination between the seer, Drik, and the seen, Drisha. So, seer, seen, discrimination. Okay. That text is Twam Pada, inquiry into the word Twam. And there is another text in this sequence of Swabhitapanandans that is called Panchakaram. And that text is an inquiry into the word twat, or tat. Sorry. Let me tell, actually, let me. I was going to do, forget it. I was going to do the recording again. It doesn't matter, just keep it rolling. Oh God, look how red I went, look. That's priceless. It's not an inquiry into that, okay? We're not having that kind of class. Oh Jesus, I don't know. Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay, whoa. Something got really warm in here. I don't know, must be heat wave. Oh Jesus. Okay, so let me get this right. Panchakaram, I've done this, I've studied this text myself. Panchakaram is an inquiry into tat, okay, tat, okay. Okay, so Driktisha Veka is an inquiry into Twam, which means you, and Panchakaram is an inquiry into tat, which means that, like tat Twamasi. Today's text, it's concerned with a C in tat Twamasi, which is you are. Just like we said, the great contemplation, tat Twamasi. The first inquiry is into your true nature, Driktisha Viveka, into your true nature. And the second inquiry, it's into the nature of the universe, or God, Panchakaram. And finally, the last stage is to understand the relationship between the two. And this is this text. The term Vakya in Sanskrit, or Vakya here, it has many meanings, but here it means Mahavakya. And a Mahavakya is any statement that reveals the non-separateness between Jiva and Ishwar. We'll say loosely the person and God. Okay. It's equating between Sat Chit Ananda Atma and Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahman. The difference there is no difference, should I say, in those two, but one is in reference to the I consciousness associated with the person, Sat Chit Ananda Atma. The other is generally associated with the consciousness of the universe, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahman. In Vedanta, we show that both of them are the same. There's no separation. Remember in the Vajrasattva, I spoke briefly about Chin Mudra, Sat Chit Ananda Atma, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahman, and the circle. That means there's no beginning and end in both of them. Okay, that's in Chin Mudra, Vicky. Okay, Chin Mudra. We'll go over that text as well sometime. This is taught in the Dakshinamurti Stotram, which Swami Taratmananda has in his online material as well, so I can teach that as well. Okay, so Vritti in this context, it means an explanation. So this is an explanation of the Mahavakya. Lagyu means short. And there is also another text. There's a Vakya Vritti wrote by Adi Shankaracharya, and it runs to 50 verses. Luckily for us, this text is only 18 verses. So it's much more easier to follow than other ones, such as Panchakaram. Panchakaram can be quite... Panchakaram isn't easy to follow, whereas this text is more easier to follow. There's an incredible amount of clarity in this text. And now we're going to speak about something that's really, really important before we get to the first verse. Swami Terapananda teaches that Advaita Vedanta, it requires multiple listening skills. And this is really important. You don't get it all at once. So don't be expecting to hear this and understand completely, as in attain enlightenment. You don't get it all at once. It doesn't work like that. And the reason it doesn't work like that is that we listen based on what we already know. So we have existing knowledge, we hear new knowledge, and it takes our knowledge a little bit further. But there's still much, much more to understand. So the first time that you hear it, you'll get it, you'll understand it, but not all of it. Okay. The second time, you'll get it a little bit more. The third time, a little bit more, but you'll not get all of it. It'll still be, things will still be revealed. There'll still be things to understand. So you get it at a certain level, and that keeps progressing. And it's why teaching is always the best form of manna. And also as well, just because a person is enlightened doesn't mean that they understand everything of Vedanta either. And that's a very humbling perspective, because manana carries on for everybody. Once a person has attained enlightenment, they can forget about the teachings if they want. They don't need the teachings for freedom from suffering, of course. But generally they carry on the teachings, they carry on studying, because it's a joy to understand. So there's no fully cooked slow crap. There's always stuff to learn. Okay, there's always stuff coming up. That's fine. So this is a unique form of learning. It's not systematic like other kinds of learning. You're not going to go from A to Z in a text and understand the text completely. Not in the terms, not in the way that Vedanta wants you to understand it. You can repeat it. You can have memorized it. You can speak it, no problem, even to that extreme. But it's not about that. That's not the kind of learning that Vedanta's inviting us to do. It's never a linear process. And the subject matter is not like anything else. If we look into the second group, the second Facebook group, we have the ashrama, and you can see that it's put in a linear process, certain teachings, but those teachings are took from different Upanishads. It's like, it looks like it's all over the place. But that was the teaching format that I more or less used for myself, and Swami said it's good to teach that way. But you can see there as well, it's not even, it looks linear, but it's not linear. It's going from one thing to another thing to another thing. It's approaching ignorance from all different kinds of angles and all different kinds of ways. Through those modules, there's probably about 60 or 70 modules in there. And through those modules, it's approaching ignorance in all kinds of ways. There's all different kinds of teaching methods being used all the time in there. And that's the way it is for everybody. And when a teacher is talking with a student, me and Ian has done this a lot. And Ian's been talking to me in the group, and then we approach something in some way, and an obstruction stays there. Obstructions are, of course, expected. That's why we're in sadhana. Obstruction stays there, so we'll approach it from another angle. And that's the way it happens. That's the way a person's, that's the way, that's the way, that's the way we resolve the obstructions and the way clarity is coming, because conditioning is very, very complex. It's not just the conditioning that we've had in this life, it's the conditioning that we've had over many lives and accumulated now. So it can be quite precise in removing the ignorance. Okay. So some of the other texts that we've went through may have been a challenging to grasp. Hopefully Bajra Govinda wasn't, but Vritti Vakya might have been. But this text is going to be more accessible. Verse 1. Line 1 begins in regard, you can have the handout of Swami Tapananda too if you have it to hand, but it's not necessary. Line 1 begins in regard to the Sthula Sharira, the physical body, and this is made of flesh. In the first few verses, we are going to see a discussion of the three bodies, the Sthula, the Sukshma, and the Karana Sharira. So we are here to study Advaita Vedanta, which isn't about the body or the mind, to show that you're not the body and the mind. And it's really ironic, isn't it, that the first thing we come across is talking about the physical body. I mean, like, if our goal is pure consciousness, which it is, why are we beginning with the physical body? Because these are completely different subject matters than what you are. And the reason we look at this is typical to Vedanta. It's practical and it works. And the reason it works is because to know what I am, I need to understand what I'm not first. Okay? And in understanding what I'm not, it's revealed that I know what I am and I've always known what I am. Line 2 is about the Sukshma Sharira. This is Vasana Maya, and it has to be made of something not physical. This is the subtle body. So the first one is the physical body, and this one is the subtle body. And here we use the word Vasana, and that word has many, many meanings. And here it's best to say it's the impression that's left upon experience. Vasanas are the root of desires, and desire leads to action, and action leads to gathering karma, and karma leads to the birth and rebirth. It leads the soul to travel to another body. Line 3, your Sukshma Sharira, which says Sharira, your Sukshma Sharira, it's also the sense organs and motor organs, like grabbing, walking, and talking. Line 4 includes pranas. There are 5 pranas also. This includes the intellect, which includes the buddhi, where you assimilate jnanam and knowledge. And there is one Sharira left out here, and that's the Karana Sharira. And we're going to look at that in the next verse. The Karana Sharira is ignorance. So we've now identified 3 Shariras, and at this point, we're going to ask a favorite question of Swami Tapananda, and it's one of my favorites also. And the question is, what good is knowing the 3 Shariras? So what? It's like, if you read Vedanta, you study Vedanta, and you realize that I am consciousness, I am limitless. Yeah, so what? It's okay to say it, it's fine, but it has to mean something, doesn't it? It has to have some implication, some practical implication to life. So this text, it only briefly mentions them, and it shows this shows the limitation of sense, the sense of the body and mind. The sense of the body and mind, they correspond to the first two sharias. Yet this text is not about them. So this text, the reason for including these sharias at the start is just to show you briefly what you are not. And then we will lead on to what you are. So even though this text starts with the two sharias of the body, the physical body, and the subtle body, the mind, we can see the limitations of sense as well, because this is not about the body and this is not about the mind. So the sense of the body and the sense of the mind are limited also. So we can see there's a clear difference now in the subject and the actual subject matter of Vedanta and the subject matter of the senses. The senses are valid for their field. Vedanta is valid for its field. It's not the same. We may speak about the body, we may speak about the mind, but only to show that we're not it. So we don't need to delve into it that much. Verse 2, line 1. The next important word is Bodha. And it has several meanings. It can mean knowledge, but in this text, such as in Arsha Bodha, Swami Tatmananda's ashram, which is knowledge of the rishis. It can mean knowledge. In this text, it means consciousness, chit. This consciousness, it's that which illumines. It is causal. That which causes them to be illumined. So consciousness illumines the three sharias and is therefore Sakshi. Sakshi is a very specific Sanskrit word. Sakshi is witness, one who sees directly. And this goes a little bit into Vritti Viveka. Here are some questions that are good points of inquiry. Who is it that directly observes the activities of the mind, of your mind? Who's observing the activities of your mind? If we think about it for a moment, there is a consciousness that observing the activities of the mind. The activities of your mind are known, but known to whom? They're known to consciousness. Consciousness in relationship to your mind, it's called Sakshi. Consciousness in relation to the person is called Atma, or to any living being is called Atma. Consciousness in relation to the universe or the world is called Brahman. And consciousness in relation to that which is witness, that would be subject, object, is called Sakshi. So it has to be in reference to the mind. Without reference to the mind, consciousness cannot be labeled as Sakshi. It would just be labeled consciousness, or probably more specifically Brahman. This is because to be a witness, there must be something to be a witness of. So consciousness is a very broad term, and in Vedanta we want to be very, very specific. Sometimes the teacher will say consciousness, but in a very specific way in context. But we have Atma, we have Brahman, we have Sakshi, we have Atma, we have Sakshi, we have Brahman stroke Turian, and they're very, very specific in context. So if we're talking about Atma, we're talking about usually a living person, but it can be any living being. If we're talking about Sakshi, we're talking about the independent consciousness that illumines the reflection. We're going to get that here in a moment, the reflection that we call this world. If we're talking about Brahman, we can be talking about the world, or we can be talking about consciousness with no attributes. If we're talking about Turium, we can't really talk about Turium because there's nothing at all. Well, I can't say there's nothing. There's Turium, but there's no name and form we can place on it, just like Brahman. So if we look into Panchakaram a little bit here, in the waking state, you are the witness. You witness the body and the sense organs, and you are aware of ignorance. In the dream state, you are no longer aware of the physical body, but you're aware of the mind and ignorance. That's why you're able to dream. In deep sleep, you're aware only of ignorance. So you are the Sakshi of all three Sharyas. Because just so I don't lose everybody here, where do you go when you're sleeping? When you're in deep sleep, where are you? Do you not exist? Well, no, you can't say that you don't exist. Me and Ian had this conversation before. You can't say that you don't exist. Even when you're waking up, you know you've been in deep sleep. How does that come up? How do you know that then? There's something registering somewhere. Okay. So this consciousness that is always witnessing is what we're talking about. Like, we never wake up and thinking, oh God. Well, sometimes people might wake up and think, oh God, what happened for the last 8 hours? Maybe. But generally we waking up and know we've been sleeping. Well, how do we know? How do we know we've been in a deep sleep? Line 3 in verse 2 is very important. We're going to look into one of the best explanations of Pratibimbavada. This is the theory of reflection. It's not my favorite, but Swami Tarapananda teaches it, and this, so we teach it. So we're going to look at it. He knows better. This is taught in Vritti Vakya that most of us studied. It's a theory of reflection. It's a very, very good teaching. It's actually a key teaching in Vedanta. Abiding in your mind is reflection. Your mind is reflected consciousness. On this part, it's very, very important. The key to relating these teachings to your experience is in this teaching, Pratibimbavada. If these teachings are separate from your experience, if they can't be relayed to your experience, they're absolutely useless, aren't they? We may as well be looking at politics or history or mathematics or something. I'm not saying they're useless, but in the context of enlightenment. Okay. So it becomes too abstract and it doesn't bring about any change to our thinking if we can't relay them to our lives, because it doesn't relate to our experience. We become disassociated from the teachings. So the Pratibimbavada is a teaching that relates in a simple way to our experience, and it is what you experience right now is a manifestation of consciousness in your mind. That is, consciousness conditioned by the ripples of your mind gives you the experience you're having now. When consciousness, it's reflected by the vrittis, by the thoughts, something happens, an agent of action becomes involved, and this is the I consciousness. The word I usually refers to an agent of action, a doer. Your sense of being an individual person is in the mind. It's a mental event. So, for an example that Swami Ramananda uses is getting absorbed in music. You get absorbed in music that much that the sense of I, the sense of yourself goes away. It's as if you become one with the music. A bit like, not like Nirval Kapha Samadhi, but a bit like a Samadhi experience. Not precisely, not technically, but a bit like that there. So the I consciousness goes away, and of course, then it comes back. But what is the I consciousness? What kind of agent is it? It's the doer of deeds. And then we ask in Vedanta, who is this I? Because before we studied Vedanta, what I meant was very, very simple. Until we come to Vedanta. We thought we know who we are until we come to Vedanta. But before, it simply means me, the person. But Vedanta leads us to question what that I means. And it reveals that the essence of that I is a particular thought that reflects consciousness. And this is the ahamkara, the ego. The ego is very, very, I have a few minutes left actually. I'll just we've come to the end of this class, but let me just talk a little bit about, diverge a little bit. So I was speaking with Swami Tapananda one time about ego, and Swami Tapananda taught me that we don't want to bypass the ego. It's the enlightened ego that we want. And again, this is not in context at this point in this text, but I'm just going to talk about it anyway. I had a conversation yesterday with somebody about somebody they were talking about was a teacher in Vedanta, and I'm not sure what it was they were teaching, but they were trying to get rid of the ego stuff. And I said, Vedanta, we don't get rid of the ego. We want the ego, because what is Vedanta? Vedanta is knowing that I, ahamkara ego, I is ego, that I am not the body and mind. Vedanta is showing that I am Brahman. So Vedanta has to use the ego. The I conscious, the I word is the ego. Okay. I is ego. It has to use the ego in such a way that it breaks down the association of the body and mind, and it shows that I am limitlessness. And that brings freedom from suffering in this life. That's an enlightened ego. The person that is enlightened, the ego is enlightened. What else is enlightened? Enlightenment is for the mind. We have this saying, before enlightenment, chop wood and carry water, and after enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. Because the external stays the same before and after enlightenment, if I can say it like that. It's the perception in the mind that changes. So because the perception in the mind has changed, the experience changes. It doesn't mean that on the outside it looks like the same experience, but your reaction and your interpretation of that experience changes, which takes away suffering. And this is because the mind, the ahamkara, is no longer identifying with the limitation of the body and mind. It identifies through Vedanta Pramana, through the teachings of Vedanta. It identifies as Satchitananda, identifies as existence, consciousness, and Satchitananda. Existence, consciousness, and limitlessness. That's what the ahamkara identifies as. Okay. So it's been taught in Vedanta as well that even though the mind itself is of course limitation, once it identifies with Brahman, it is as good as Brahman. Okay, guys, any questions? We have 5 minutes. Hopefully not. No, Ian, you don't. Judy, you don't know. Vicky, you do, unfortunately.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
the ego, you said the ego is the same as the mind?
No,
well,
the Antakarana has 4 parts. The Antakarana has 4 parts.
Okay.
Two parts, it's all important, of course, but 2 parts. One part is the ahamkara, which is the ego, and the other part is the buddhi, which is the intellect. So the yanam that we're studying is assimilated in the buddhi, in the intellect, but but we need we don't bypass the ego in any way, because the ego is really, really important. But of course, what happens is, if an enlightened person says that I am Brahman, if I say that I am Brahman, and I know that I am Brahman, I know that it's not the person that's just said I am Brahman. Or no, I know that, I refuse that. I know that it's not me, Brahman, that has just said I am Brahman. It's the person. Okay. So the ahamkara can't be bypassed. To make the claim I am Brahman, it has to be done through the ego. It can't be bypassed completely at all. So that the conviction that I am Brahman is only there because the ego has identified with as Brahman. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, it is about that the ego really is identified, because I can also think of a situation. Aha, I am Brahman. You know, yes, I am Brahman, and that is that is the ego still being the ego saying, I am Brahman, or not?
We have to remember that, yes, and the ego has to. If a person, an enlightened person, claims Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, well, it is. Brahman doesn't have a mouth, and Brahman doesn't speak, so Brahman didn't just say this, but the mind, the mouth said this. The mind enabled the mouth to say this, and this was through the ego and through the buddhi. Okay, so the ego is identifying as Brahman, so the person can say with conviction, I am Brahman, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. But of course, this is a human thing. Enlightenment is about you, Brahman, but enlightenment is for humans. Yeah? Brahman doesn't need enlightenment. I am Brahman, and I have always known that I am not limited, because there only is me. How can I ever be confused? I can't be. It's the human that's confused. It's the human Robert that's confused. Okay. So are you following me? Okay, Vicky? That's yes.
Yes, yes, I follow you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Until now, yeah.
So just to reiterate quickly, the enlightened person, enlightenment is for the mind. It's not for Brahman. So any claim will always be a mental claim. Okay. Any claim will always be a mental claim. Okay. If that makes sense. Okay.
Yes, it makes sense. I was just thinking, the ego can claim I am Brahman and let's say understand or has gone through the things, and I think maybe the ego can also claim I am Brahman and still be ignorant, still have all false
because what happens is it can be when the ego totally identifies as being Brahman. That's because in the intellect, in the buddhi, and the intellect, that has been assimilated properly, so that the two of them work hand in hand. They're not separate. They're not in conflict. Up until the point they're totally combined, they're totally in unison. Then there will be a little bit of conflict, and that's what sadhana resolves. Okay?
Yeah. Yeah, clear.
What we're doing is we're just identifying. I'm going to cut out now in the time. We're just identifying as the body and mind, and identifying as that which you are, Brahman. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Namaste.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Namaste. Bye bye.
Bye bye.